Hello, this is Tagore, and today we're going to be talking about self growth, looking internally and having the constant hunger to improve oneself, to get more knowledge, to constantly want to grow as a human being, and be that through education, be that through conversations with people, and so forth. My guest today is a very well respected uh, marketeer for a global FMCG organization. But on the side, he also does two things really well. One is that he constantly looks at learning new skills, learning more stuff. And the second thing, he's a dedicated family man, a wonderful father to his three kids, a great son, and also a great husband. So, how do all of these come together in helping us grow as individuals? Let's talk. Hello, hello, hello. This is Tagore, and welcome to my podcast, A Pint of Imbecile Wisdom. Today's conversation is, it's special to me because of two reasons. One is I'm very intrigued by what my guest does. A he's a leadership guru. He's a startup mentor. He's a speaker. He's a guest lecturer at schools at places like the London School of Business and many more. And he's also a marketing guru and a marketing trainer. But what gets me about my guest is that he's constantly looking for human growth within himself, and that ability to reinvent himself is what has always inspired me about him. On a personal note, I consider him to be one of the very few people that I'm close to. Our families are very close. And due to that, I think I had to beg, borrow, and steal to get him onto my podcast. And finally, when I found the ability to blackmail him about something, here he is. So, my dear friend, I can't believe I've said that. Anser, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Tagore. You were right about one thing. You sure did twist my arm to get here. But pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Good. Anser, so before we start with anything else about the human growth, about evolving on a constant basis and reinventing ourselves and why it's important, but also we'll end the podcast by talking about the importance of giving back as well. Yeah. Why don't you tell our viewers a little bit about your background and yourself?
Sure. So how far back do I need to go? I'll start off with what I'm most proud of, being a dad of three. So very privileged. I think families come first. That's what truly shape us. But then moving back, yes, my day job is that of a marketeer, and I'm very fortunate to be working for a billion-dollar brand that one of the global FMCG companies have entrusted me with. But that was really just the start of the journey, because as a marketeer, you can't help but notice things around you and see how individuals and businesses and brands grow. So that took me on a leadership journey, and of a journey of really discovering myself and then trying to help others along the way. So I would say curiosity is something that really sparked off a lot of those journeys, which we'll get into in a bit. But yes, I've been in Singapore now for just over a decade. Before that, I've had the privilege to live and work out of several places, including the Middle East, where I was for 8 years, Europe, another half a decade, and of course, originally from Pakistan.
Yeah, so I was just going to say you're Pakistani British, so it must be quite tough when England are playing Pakistan in the cricket match. I won't go into who you support for that, but Anser, you're an accidental marketer, though.
Very true.
Tell me about that.
Very true. So it's funny, Tagore, how we plan things and things turn out exactly the opposite. So several years ago, when I was very young, had you even told me about marketing, I would have asked, what is marketing? Because it really wasn't a big thing, let alone a profession when I was growing up. And the irony is that, yes, I do call myself the accidental marketer, and I'll narrate to you briefly how that happened. But if you had asked me as a child, I was very clear. Unlike most kids, I was so clear since the age of 8. I just wanted to be one thing, and that was to be an astronaut. I really wanted to go in space and be an astronaut. Unfortunately, I was born in a very poor country, which did not have a space program. So I thought the next best thing would to be a pilot. But every kid around me really wanted to be a pilot, and honestly, that was never really, just touching the skies was never a dream. I then held on to the dream of being an accountant, a hardcore finance guy. I had my uncle's example who did terrifically well. And from the age of 12 all the way till 21 or 22, I was laser focused on being an accountant. So much so that my first degree in the UK is in finance, accounting and finance. And I actually started off with one of the big four accounting and consulting firms, Deloitte in London. So I did my first year of professional work in London with Deloitte, working at different clients. And that was fascinating because you got the chance to not only go around every 6 weeks to a new location around London, but you also got the taste of some great industries, and you got a flavor of many different clients. But by the end of the year, I just felt that everything was by template. And I just felt there was nothing, there's no creativity. There was nothing that I could do different to what Tagore could do different. And eventually I said, I was also getting tired of going to a new place every few weeks. I wanted my desk, I wanted my space, I wanted a project that I could own end to finish. So I applied for Unilever. And Unilever had a great leaders program. They used to call it the Future Leaders Program. They still do, which is a thorough management trainee program that runs anywhere between 1 to 3 years. And then you're on the fast track thereafter. So I applied in London in 100 VE, as it's called, 100 with Victoria Embankment, which is the global headquarters. And believe it or not, I applied for finance, which used to be called commercial. And they have a very lengthy process where I still remember, have an 8-page form, application form. If you get through that, you have a first interview, and finally, after a series of interviews, you get invited for what was then called the assessment center. Now it's more nicely called the Discovery Center, which is a full day of assessment. And they have psychiatrists sitting in the psychologists sitting around the corners of the room observing you, group discussions, whatnot. And the amazing thing is, Tagore, I went through that whole day. I went through that 3-month-long process as somebody who'd apply for commercial or finance. And right at the end of the day, when I was waiting for it, was 4:30 in the afternoon. It was like the final leg of that extensive interview process, which was a group interview, a panel interview with everyone who had flown in from different countries, their HR. And I was just waiting for my turn when I still remember there was this lady, I think she was called Sue. She was from HR, and she just looked at me. She said, "Oh, you're in deep thoughts." And what was in front of me, funnily enough, Tagore, was one image of a bottle, a CK perfume bottle. There was no human in it. And later on, now I can tell you, we call those key visuals in marketing. But it was the most beautiful image I'd seen. And what was going through my head at the time, which I told Sue, was, wow, if marketing can do such wonders with a single bottle and make it look so beautiful, I wonder what it might be like. And she's like, well, why don't you try it? And I said, Sue, you must be kidding. I'm qualified as a finance person. I've applied as a finance person. My last year's experience was all in finance. And she still, I remember her words echo in my ear. She's like, go for it, live for your dreams. And I don't know what was going in my head. I would never do that in a million years. I went in, called in, gave my interview. 25 minutes later, it was already past 5 o'clock, Friday evening. Everybody wants to go home, including the panel who was interviewing me. And they said, finally, any questions? And in those days, they were very stiff interviews. They asked that question, but they didn't expect you to ask any questions. And I said, yeah, actually, I have a request, not a question. And I had these 4 set of eyes staring at me. And I said, could you please consider me for marketing instead of commercial? And I tell you, if there's something called a death stare, I saw 4 of those. I experienced the longest 30 seconds of my life. And then one of them just nodded with a very stiff face and showed me the door. And I was like, this is it. I came through this entire process and I killed it for myself. Nothing happened on the Monday. We used to wait for things in the post in those days. Tuesday morning, I got a letter. With trembling hands, I opened it. Thankfully, they made me an offer. And thankfully, it was not in sales. It was in something what they used to call customer marketing. Again, I didn't know what customer marketing was, but that's an interface between marketing and sales. So they kind of didn't trust me entirely, but they saw the intent. And then it's another story how I made my way through customer marketing into pure marketing. But yes, that's why I call myself the accidental marketer, who literally pure incidentally, by looking at that one image, got so swayed by marketing that I listened to my instincts, asked for it, and I got it, thankfully.
So that's an interesting story, Anser. But you know what? Now, having known you for the past decade or so, I've seen you evolve. I mean, you just go on and on and on, honestly, about marketing. I mean, a lot of us have got to ask you to shut up and not talk about marketing. But what I noticed about you, and I've got to throw this in, besides being a very passionate father to 3 wonderful kids that you have, the other thing I noticed about you, Anser, was your constant hunger to reinvent yourself, right? And I remember once when I met you, you very casually, as if oh yeah, I saw a bird in the sky. You just said, "I'm talking at Harvard," and you were going to talk at Harvard, and I was like, "What?" And you were very casual about it. You were humbled about it and everything. And I was just wondering, what's he going to talk about at Harvard, right? Didn't cross my mind. But since then, you've spoken at so many forums, you've spoken at so many corporates, you've spoken at the London School of Business, okay? How did all of that speaking gig happen? Do you remember the first one and how you fell into that? You told us how you fell into marketing, but how did you feel into this whole guest lecturer kind of gig?
Yeah, so Tagore, it's really interesting when you look back. It's always easy to connect the dots. You just don't know when you're in that journey how one thing leads you to another. But I think purely if you love what you do, you're always looking for new ideas, new thoughts, new case studies, new material. And that somehow leads you to what I like to call failure case studies, which are always more interesting than the success stories everybody is very happy to narrate. And I think somewhere along that line, with that passion, somebody spotted that, okay, this guy could add some value to our forum. And I started getting these invites. But I was very good at something that they teach in management now, which is, surprisingly, I was good at saying no. I was very good at saying no because I was very focused. I actually really, even to this day, love my job, because the beauty of being an accidental marketer is that since that day, now more than 2 decades forward, I can tell you no 2 days of a marketer's life are the same. Every day there's something new, something more interesting. But then something happened to go in 2016 in June, and I still remember the date. The first time I ever spoke in a public forum outside of my job was June 16, 2016. And the way that happened was I was just sitting. I have to give credit to one of my former bosses, who's now a very good friend, actually. But at the time, I guess he also saw some of these germs in me. And we were sitting in the cafeteria in the office, just having a coffee before we went back to our work. And he was like, hey, listen, somebody reached out to me. And there is this, it was a really weird topic, Tagore. It was data analytics. There's a data, and this is 2016, remember when nobody even knew what big data was, let alone data. And he tells me, I've got this invite. Obviously, he was my boss. He had a more fancy title than I did. And he got an invite as a speaker from the organizers. And he said, look, I'm simply not here. I'm flying. And I've already given them your name. So just make sure you respond to them, because I was also notorious not for always replying to every mail. So he never really gave me a choice. But more than that, I think 2 things changed in that moment. One was, look, he could have given anyone's name. Our business, I'm very fortunate to have some amazing colleagues to this day. So there was no reason why he would give mine. So I thought, okay, let's respect his kind of experience there. And secondly, to go that day till today, from 2016, June 16, I stopped saying no to opportunities that came my way. I just made that 1 millimeter shift. And it was really easy. I could have said, look, I have nothing to do with data. So thank you very much. But I said, okay, let's just go on with it and see how it goes. So I just replied to the first mail, and then it went on from there. And thankfully, that was the first time. But I really enjoyed the experience. I really enjoyed the experience because when you step out, you get to learn. It's not just that I love hearing my voice, but it's a great opportunity to share the stage with others, to widen your network, to really understand what we took for granted in my business could actually be something others really look up to, and vice versa. So that really started a whole journey, or really opening up a whole new world, simply because I decided I'm not going to say no.
Now, very recently, and maybe about a year ago, something, you obviously called me up on a Sunday morning when I'm doing what I do best, sleeping, to share the great news that you had become a certified Cambridge trainer. Yeah, and I was very proud of you then, and I still am. But I want to ask you this question. What is this hunger, and why is it important for constantly educate yourself? You're in a great position in your career. You've got great experience, but I've noticed one thing about you, that you're constantly looking to learn new things. You're constantly, not just about marketing, but about so many other things, about leadership and everything else. Why is that important to you, and why do you think that should be important for the rest of the world?
Yeah, it's really interesting and funny that you recall that, because I was very reluctant to get into any form of training. I love designing training myself. I love giving them out, and I love feeding hungry hearts and minds. But I was very reluctant, and I think it was thanks to COVID, as it's pushed many of us in many directions. I thought, okay, coaching is something I naturally take to. I do a bit of mentoring as well, which, by the way, is very different. But why don't I actually get certification? So I actually went for this course with Cambridge, and truly learned a lot. And the phenomenal thing was that it was very counterintuitive, because my style, Tagore, which partially answers your question, I'm very passionate about anything that I know. Just knowing is not enough. How can I package it in the simplest possible way and literally feed it to you, so you don't have to go through the whole process? A good teacher is not someone who makes things complicated, but someone who gives it structure, makes it really easy, gives you 3 clear steps or however many, and so that you can circumvent that path that person went through. Now, coaching is very different. So that for me was really interesting, because there I can't be a mentor. I can't really tell you, I've been there, done that, do this. It really is about leading you uh, from yourself internally. So it's the power of questions. You can only ask questions, you can't give advice. And that was very difficult for me, very counterintuitive. But thanks to the people that Cambridge attracts, I think I learned a lot from others around me as well. It's just that it was really through case studies and through learning and through practicing during the course certification itself that you realize the power of questions. Because if I lead you and I make it feel like it's your idea, just ask you questions, it is so much more powerful, and you are so much more likely to act than to just receive advice from me. So
But
I think,
sorry, you haven't answered the question. As I said, you were in a very comfortable position in your career. Why do you have this constant hunger to learn more stuff? I mean, what drives you towards it?
so really good question, Tagore. I don't know if I have the exact answer, but I think, again, partially I have to give credit to my profession, because it's not a closed profession. It's not something you can sit in a lab and do, or just complete a template. For marketing, you really need to be, if you're a good marketer and if you want to constantly grow and you want to grow your business, your brand, you need to keep looking out. You need to keep your adversaries, not enemies, but adversaries closer than your friends. And you got to be constantly looking for what's working for others. How can we do better? So I think that kind of ingrains in your brain that it's not a closed job. I need to really look out. They now say marketing is the new finance, ironically, because when I started off in marketing, it was very willy and washy. Now you can be laser sharp about what you want to measure. So I think that kind of built that professional curiosity. But then they didn't stop there, because thanks to my tours, thanks to being on the speaking circuit, I met some very good people. I also met some people who were not so good on stage, and I felt like, this guy was speaking so nicely to me just off stage 2 minutes ago. What happened to him? And very accomplished people. And that sowed the seed of, okay, one thing that my business has taught me is the art of presenting impactfully, communicating clearly, Why is it that so many accomplished people just cannot communicate their ideas? So that got me into the whole soft skills space, leadership, productivity, charisma, rapport, presenting with impact, because I felt the world needs more of this. If only more of us could speak out, share our ideas, build rapport with each other, the world around us would be so much better. So I think it was a combination of professional curiosity that led me to this path, and eventually this whole passion of we grow together. I cannot grow at your cost. There is no growth. No growth comes at the cost of anyone. And if I, it's contagious, Tagore. And I've seen it happen when the whole team spirit comes together. So that's really what got me into it.
Okay. Now, among the many hats that you wear, you're also a mentor to many startups. Yeah. What's driving you towards that, and what are some of the highs and the lows in that particular space of what you do?
So I guess a few years ago when I first got into this, it was a very steep learning path because it was literally the antithesis of everything that I had learned up to that point. I was working, and I've been fortunate to work for more than one blue chip Fortune 500 multinational. And we're always big on budgets. I've always been lucky to work on big brands and work on the core, as we call it, the big parts of those brands. So money was never short. We were always just short of ideas and then the will to implement. And when I got into this whole startup scene, it was very interesting because we felt that there's a lot we could learn from each other. They have a lot of risk-taking appetite, which we don't, which we really run away from. And good marketing really comes when you open yourself to being, a little provocative to really generate that talkability. They're also big on speed. And contrary to companies my size, the companies where I work, we're like this mighty giant ship that takes ages to move course. So I think there was a lot of give and take, and there was a realization very early in the startup world that there was something to learn from both parties. And over the years, we've worked on some great projects together. I've worked individually in coaching and mentoring the founders. And I saw that they were very passionate, Tagore. They were very technically sound, but when it came to a good pitch, they were not able to, they kind of assumed the other person either knew everything or they were just doing a data dump on him. So I started doing what I call pitch clinics, which is in 15 minutes, I don't know you, come and tell me about your business, and then motivate me enough to invest in it. And that's where a lot of them found great value in it, and I learn a lot from them, and vice versa.
So, Anser, that brings me to a question I wanted to ask you. In the world that is evolving, our attention spans are becoming really, really small. Yeah, nobody has the patience or the respect to hear a story. It's all about give me the story in 5 minutes, in 5 seconds, in 15 minutes, as you said. How has that changed the marketing world? And is the marketing world to be blamed for that? Or is it just the world that has forced marketing to evolve into that?
So you see that we lately, last several years, digital marketing has come of age, and I do train, and I'm a facilitator for digital marketing as well. And I always say digital marketing is no different. It's just marketing in a digital world. So that answers your second question, which is actually no, it's marketing is not to blame. Marketing took most of the brunt because we had to relearn everything, because all of a sudden our customers, our consumers, people like yourselves are spending so much time not on TV, not on outdoor, not on radio, not sitting on benches in parks, but literally billboards. All of that had to be thrown out. You were spending all your time on these tiny devices. And therefore, it's about applying the marketing principles in the digital world where all of you are. And you're absolutely right. Attention spans have shrunk shambolically. 2013 numbers are that they had shrunk below that of a goldfish. Now they've dropped by a further third. So Gen Z, it was below 9 seconds. Now Gen Z is 2.89 seconds. And then Gen Alpha, I have no idea what they will be like. And the truth is, when I first started Tagore, 2 decades ago, we used to make 1 minute long films. And notice the language here. We used to literally call them films because that'll be what short films are about. Those were our ads. Those were 1 minute long ads. And somewhere down the road, some junior person in the team would then work on a 30-second edit, because eventually we would, after a few months of airing, we would move to that. Very soon, 30 seconds became the long form, and we started briefing our creative agencies and the partners that I work with for a 15-second short edit. Fast forward another few years, 15 seconds have become what we initially briefed for and worked towards. And then there's a 6-second cut down. And very recently, I was at the headquarters for Facebook, for APAC, and we were talking about, when you're about to press the skip button on YouTube, as it's going down in 5 seconds, now there's talk about that's the long form. How can we have 0-second branding? Now, 0-second branding basically means the moment the first frame comes up, you got to know which brand I am, because very soon the only thing you'll be noticing is that small box as it goes 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, skip. So that's been a challenge all along, how we've tried to be more succinct, more brief, communicate our message, not in 1-minute long films, but in 6-second short form advertising, to the extent that now, after great difficulty, we've even mastered or sort of overcome that hurdle of 0-second branding. But the truth is, Tagore, even in my communication courses, I always say the way we are wired, the way we've been taught at school, is now also obsolete, because we start with the fairies, we start with once upon a time, and we end at happily ever after. Literally now, nobody has the time or the patience. So you have to invert all of that. You need to start with happily ever after. You have to start with the conclusion, then move to the story if people are interested. And that's why one of the techniques I teach is ABC, action before context. Don't take me on a long story. Tell me immediately what do you need from me, then give me the context. So yeah, it's funny. It's happened in a single lifetime or half a lifetime, where we've witnessed so much change, whereas so many generations before us, the golden rules have worked for us. For now, you have to, every 5 years, tear open the rule book and write it all over again.
Okay, so now let's come back to the reinventing ourselves. You touched upon Gen Z and Alpha and whatever. What would you say to that generation that are either, going to be coming into the workplace, or even the generation that is just coming to the workplace now, on the importance of reinventing oneself? How do you see it evolving, and what advice would you give to this bunch of people?
So I think when it comes to reinventing yourself, it's no longer an option. It's something that you will have to do, or you will be forced to do. I might need to change professions once in my life already, but for those who are entering the workforce now, every 5, maximum 10 years, you literally will need to reskill, upskill, and come back to the workforce with, maybe in a potentially very different. So this whole model of studying once, doing a degree, doing a master's, and then entering the workforce for the next 40 years, that's completely obsolete. So lifelong learning is a word we've all heard, but literally now it's about truly not just learning for the sake of learning and just counting the hours, but what do you bring back to the table? And how do you truly reinvent not just yourself for the sake of it, but the work that you're doing? And for that reason, I would say, Tagore, for those who are just entering the workforce, or those who are still, in their early years, I would recommend 3 things that they must pay attention to. Number 1 is curiosity, because without curiosity, you will just close yourself off. You really need to have that hunger, that drive to constantly look around you. And today the tools are all there, right? We used to work in silos. Now you know what your competitor is doing. You know what someone else in the other corner of the world is doing. You just need to have that hunger and that curiosity to find out who's doing it better than me, how are they doing it, where am I wrong? And that's a constant journey. So curiosity is number 1. Number 2 would perhaps be creativity, because with a lot of AI coming in and machine learning coming in, a lot of the jobs that people do today, my own job, will probably become obsolete, and I'll be laughing at myself a few years from now, because a lot of this automation will take away. But what cannot be taken away is creativity, creative problem solving, approaching things with a different angle. So I think once you're curious, which kind of blends into creativity is the natural next step, where how are you solving this problem different from an algorithm would do? And that's where the human in you really comes out. That will never be obsolete. And I guess the last one, which is the most important and I think the most difficult, Tagore, it's collaboration. I think somewhere along the way, we have lost the skill of collaboration, and I think it's even worse for the new generation. There was a news in the Times, the British newspaper, yesterday that 80% of teens between the age of 12 to 18 are spending more than 80% of their time at home, indoors, in their room, on a device. And I remember many years ago, I've been fortunate to be part of teams that have won awards. We won a Cannes Awards also for a campaign which was about comparing outdoor time that children in the UK are spending, and this is representative for people globally. The amount of time that children are spending outdoors, Tagore, is far less than what a convict is allowed. Even those convicts who've done the most dangerous crimes are allowed sunlight hours, 2 hours, twice a week. Kids today are not even doing that. So I think the tragedy is that social media, as it's called, is actually making us antisocial. It's pushing us away from that whole social element. And the big tragedy is that as a result, kids don't know how to interact, how to speak, how to communicate, how to work together. That's why I think collaboration, after curiosity and creativity, the ability to bring, because as you grow in your roles, it's not about what you do, it's how you can influence and passionately, make people so involved that they do the things that you want them to. So it's winning through people, not just yourself. And for that, the skill of collaboration is something I think will be the hardest for the new generation.
Okay, I have a question for you on that point then. I see it as we live in two different worlds, okay? We have dinosaurs like myself in corporates, okay? And then we have these young kids, all right? The dinosaur is about spending time outdoors, it's about, old school and so forth, disciplined, structured, everything. These guys here, less attention span, more dynamic, and so forth. We're living in an era today when both these worlds are in the same workplace. Yeah. From a leadership perspective, I'm going to make you wear another hat of yours. From a leadership perspective, what do you think is going wrong, and what can each side learn from each other?
So brilliant question, Tagore. And here, I think the onus is more on the older generation, on oldies like you and me, to make an effort to really connect to those younger than us. Now, there's this beautiful concept that came 5 years ago called reverse mentoring. And one of the senior leaders in my company was actually doing that. And I saw the value in it, because a lot of the times as marketeers, we were trying to adopt these new apps that people were spending time on. At that time, it was Snapchat. And clearly, none of us had ever used it, let alone experienced it. And the youngest, in fact, there was an intern, a girl who had come from Singapore Management University, who actually then taught us about it. So I think this whole concept of reverse mentoring, you don't always have to look up and look out. You can look within the company and really formalize this. Even HR could formalize this, or we as individuals could take it upon ourselves to really connect with the younger ones. There's so much to learn from. And then I can tell you something very interesting as recent as yesterday, where we had a visitor. We had our president from London visiting, and our senior leader was debriefing the wider team to tell them that, okay, guys, the visit went really well, etc. And then he was giving some examples that he was getting blank stares. He mentioned the Spice Girls. He mentioned David Hasselhoff. He mentioned Laurel and Hardy. And all these young ones, the interns and the very junior people, were giving these blank looks. So I think it's really same on me, that we need to find out who are their heroes, who are the influencers that they are following, and give examples that are relatable to them. And this will only happen if we have a dialogue. And that dialogue can only happen if we can find a bridge. Like you said, we are the outdoor dinosaurs. First opportunity, and I'm out there. These people are constantly stuck on their screens. And we need to find that bridge. And that bridge could be conversations on things that matter to them. So I think the onus is really on us to make sure that we come to their level and speak their language on topics that matter to them.
I think that's the key point, because I just finished the podcast on leadership versus managers. We talk about the managers being toxic. It's about, you're in my team, I'm your boss, and you will do this. Whereas leaders are, as you said, nurturing, understanding, helping people grow, bringing themselves down to their team's levels, just so that they can grow up together again. And I feel that a lot of these so-called dinosaurs like ourselves lack that understanding. That when we get younger people coming into our organizations, we are kind of waiting for them to come on board our side of the fence, rather than us even making an effort to actually start that journey from their side of the fence. Okay, and that has impact now again on marketing. As you said, marketing is evolving. You've got 5 seconds now, and you've got 0 seconds, as you mentioned. Okay, how does someone like you actually? What's your key to secret? But not only being aware of these things, grasping, do you piggyback silently on the young interns in your team? How important is that?
I try to, Tagore. I try to. They used to say this in old leadership adage that don't tell your team what to do, but don't tell them how. And I think times have moved down. We also should not be telling them what to do. It's going back to the whole thing of collaboration, which is tell them the why. And then sit down and even get their involvement in the what before you even discuss the how. Because a lot of the times the best ideas come from young ones. I mean, we're both parents. We've seen how our children also sometimes give the most obvious but really, really good solutions to problems that we are trying to grapple with. So I think that it's all about inclusivity. It's about including the team, not being hierarchical. Because sometimes the best ideas will come from the youngest ones, thanks to the exposure today, which was never the case when we were growing up. And then making it a collaborative process where you reach out to the team and involve and engage them far early. And you just set up the problem. What all you need to solve is, or agree on, is what's the problem you're trying to solve. And not be passionate about the solution, because the solution could come from anywhere. Be married to the problem, not the solution. And I think that approach, although I have to say I'm guilty of not adopting it all the time, because we're sometimes stripped for time and we don't have the patience ourselves. But I have to tell you, every time I've managed to do that, it's saved time in the longer term.
But Anser, for you right now, here you are talking about leadership, startup mentor, public speaker, guest lecturer, marketeer. Are you finally content with what you do, or is there a lot more that you want to do, and do you even know what it is?
Not at all, Tagore. Despite the strain of spirituality that I follow, where there's no concept of different janams or different lives, I always joke, and I really do wish I could have had 9 lives or even more, because I just feel so enthusiastic and so passionate about. Honestly, if I wasn't a marketer, I would have loved to be an architect. I would love to be a chef. I'd love to do this. So much I want to do, and I just feel that a single lifetime is not enough to do that. But definitely, without shaking off everything that I've learned and acquired in my life, there's definitely a long, long way to go. And I'll give you one tangible example. I mean, I think I'm clear on what are the next 2-3 things I want to explore, which I haven't done. But one simple symbolism that I can share with you is that I don't even think of retirement. I cannot relate to retirement as a concept, because I feel as you grow older, you find things that you enjoy, that genuinely bring you great fun. Why would you even entertain the concept? So I see myself, a lot of the things that I'm acquiring, I see myself doing it literally till the last breath. So no, there's a long runway ahead, and I really can't wait to get my fingers in all those different pies.
I think you've done a lot, Anser, and I don't want to take that away from you. I think you've evolved, you've reinvented yourself, and you're constantly on that hunger, and I think that's amazing that you do that. But I also think you're quite fortunate and privileged, and I'll tell you why. You're privileged to be the son of the man who you call your father, and I've had the pleasure to meet him, and I think that's one thing. You're very lucky to be married to the woman that you're married to, and I think you have 3 amazing kids that keep you in your place and keep you grounded as well. Okay, so I think that's where you're privileged. I think that's where you're lucky, but I think it's not taking away all of the stuff that you do whatever.
No, it's actually very true, Tagore, because it's funny you mention it. I always say anything that money cannot buy, I'm truly blessed with. And since you mentioned my father, that whole concept of, what is retirement really comes from him, because despite having a terrific professional career where he won several global awards, sitting where he was in Pakistan, it's amazing. 25 years, fast forward 25 years after his retirement, in fact, more than that, he retired in 1990. It's amazing that at any point in time when I look back, his best work, he's done it in his last 5 years, in his most recent 5 years, because again, he got into many things after that. The central theme was still giving back. And again, he keeps, bettering himself every 5 years. And I think that's where a lot of this passion also comes from.
So okay, I'm going to ask this is my final question. You talked about giving back, which your father does, and I know he's built schools and whole bunch of stuff for the needy in Pakistan. But you said giving back. As you know from my recent sort of trip that I've had, I've been very overwhelmed, and I found the power in being kind and giving to people. Yeah. From a marketing guru, how would you market that to the generations to come back? The importance of giving, of being kind, of serving people. How would you, as a marketing person, put that onto the table? Let's see how good you answer.
So that's a beautiful question, and let me put my money myself. Let me answer it in one word: fulfillment. Fulfillment. If that's what you're looking for, because we say growth, we say lots of things, success. At the end, what gives you a good sleep at night is when you're feeling content and when you're feeling fulfilled. And that truly only comes, Tagore. You can chase trophies, you can chase money, but it only comes when you know that you've contributed positively to another human.
Yeah, but purely from a world of dark marketing, as I call it, you know what? These young kids, they don't understand what fulfillment is, and they won't until they get into their 40s, right? I'm talking about these kids now, the 20s, okay? I want you to market fulfillment to them. They don't know what it is. Like how you said, you know what? I never needed Calvin Klein's perfume, but I saw that post and I went, I could do with that. Self-fulfillment, the concept of being kind, the concept of serving people, yeah, to this lot of kids. How would you do that?
Amazing. So you've truly done what you love, which is putting me on the spot here. So
of course,
no idea. But okay, let me give it a shot. So truly, to these guys, I would try and speak their language, and I'll say, look, if you're looking for high, any kind of high, whether it's a career high or a success high, no high is greater and more sustainable than the high of fulfillment. And fulfillment will only come when you go and contribute to someone else's welfare. Been there, done that, trust me. Try other things, they will wane off. This is the only thing that will last and give you goosebumps.
I can't believe that you actually answered that quite satisfactorily. Well done, Anser. You must be worth every cent that they say that you are.
And I can't believe you're actually commending me on something and not pulling me down. So thank you.
No, look, I did wake up this morning and I said to myself, I've got to be nice to Anser. I can't pull pranks on him like I usually do. But honestly, I'm just going to end this podcast on a very personal note. I'm very fortunate to have you in my world. Not only just as the marketing guru that has ruined my creativity for the past 5 years, because as a creative person, I have the virginity of being creative and wanting to do something because I want to do it creatively. And then you come in and you'll always ruin it by putting in a structure, a plan, and this concept that you taught me is about working backwards. And I notice that subconsciously now, whenever I'm working on anything creative with my friends in the film industry or whatever, I'm always working backwards. So there's a rewiring that has happened where, I as you said, tell me what you need from me in 1 second, and then tell me the backstory. Yeah. So I think
beautiful. I'm just so glad because this whole working backwards thing is something I'm very passionate about, and I'm so glad you're adopting it and you remember it.
No, it is, and I always say this. Anser's ruined it for me in my life. Now I can no longer be the hippie creative person that I've always been all my life. Now there's a reason why. What is the objective? Who's the target audience? I never knew these terms until I met you, Anser. Okay, and And the other thing, I think, seeing the way that you lead your life, so sincere to your faith, uh, the clown in your family, and your wife and kids will completely endorse that. And just the way you are as a father, you were as a husband, and the way you are with me as a friend as well. I think it's great that you've kept the marketing side of your life away from those elements, and I think that's what makes it very important and really credible. Yeah, because when you put on your marketing hat, I'm always like, what's he going to tell me now? But I think you do a great job at it, and you really are an inspiration. The way you always are hungry for knowledge, and not just that, but you actually then take the next step, and you're sharing, be it on a platform or be it just with me when we sit by the poolside, about the concepts of working back. And you always, I feel that you give back to community a lot, and that's great. So I wish you all the success in everything else that you're going to do in your life. Don't call me up on a Sunday morning in excitement to tell me what you're working on, because I'm not interested. And I'm just kidding about that. So best of luck, and thank you for talking to me on my rather strangely named podcast, A Pint of Imbecile Wisdom.
Thank you. It's an absolute pleasure. I'm so happy. Thanks for having me, Tagore.
Great having you, Anser.